What, you egg? That immortal and thought-provoking line is just one example of the razor-sharp skill and dexterity that Shakespeare possessed when he turned his talents to the art of insults. Today we're going to take a look at some speeches that show that Shakespeare could hurl invectives just as well as he could write a love poem. When we looked at the sonnets, the poet had a lot of bitterness and anger and no trouble expressing it. Shakespeare's characters could be just as harsh. He had everything, ranging from fools poking fun at people, all the way to wizards and kings invoking eternity to lay down deep, blood-stained curses. The best insults come from the cleverest characters, and Rosalind, the main character of As You Like It, is one of Shakespeare's cleverest. In this play, she's been having a pretty hard life and has to run away to the forest to escape yet another horrible uncle. I guess Shakespeare had a thing about uncles. She's dressed as a boy because safety, and because this is a Shakespeare play, and that's pretty much what they do. She runs across all these crazy characters, all of who kind of amuse her and mostly annoy her, and in this speech, she's just overheard a conversation between a sad young shepherd called Silvius, who is very pathetically in love with this haughty young shepherdess called Phoebe, who has just finished telling Silvius to go get lost. Rosalind, who's pretty lovesick in her own right, can't stand to hear the hopeless romantic get his heart broken, and she literally jumps out of the bushes, still dressed as a man, to give this scornful shepherdess some of her own medicine. One of the reasons that I love this speech is because it's classic wish fulfillment. Have you ever had that moment listening to someone else spew a load of hot garbage, and you just wish that you could turn around and tell them off? Well, Shakespeare must have been pretty familiar with that feeling, because Rosalind turns around and just about bites Phoebe's head off. After Phoebe tells Silvius that she doesn't love him and she doesn't even pity him, Rosalind gets right in her face saying, "And why, I pray you? Why won't you pity this poor guy? Who might be your mother?" Which is a great way to call someone common as dirt. What makes you so great? You got some fancy mother that I never heard of that you can insult, exalt, and all at once over the wretched. Rosalind brings up Phoebe's mother, an insult standard since the days of old, and then gives her this 1-2 punch with insult, exalt. Wretched refers to poor lovesick Silvius, and here it means like unhappy or unfortunate, not like nasty and awful. Rosalind keeps going, quickly. Notice how these mid-stops that propel her to the next thought. She's harsh. She says straight up, "You have no beauty," and then puts a little spin on it and digs deeper, as "by my faith I see no more in you that without candle may go dark to bed," which basically means like, you think you're some glowing goddess or something? I see nothing on your face that's gonna light up a dark room. You're still gonna need a candle to find your way to bed. And she asks, "Must you therefore be proud and pitiless? You're nothing special. Take pity on this poor guy." It's very clever that all of the lines in this first section are questions. Rosalind's smart, and she knows that asking, "Who the hell are you?" is better than just hurling insults. And she ends this first section of the speech with an end stop, a nice pause. The next line explains this pause. "Why, what means this? Why do you look on me?" And then we get another pause. What's happening is that Phoebe, because of Stockholm Syndrome or low self-esteem or something, is visibly falling in love with Rosalind, who, remember, is dressed like a boy. Shakespeare doesn't really use many stage directions because, the man didn't have time for that. But he was wicked smart, and so he included lines like this to tell the actors what was going on and how to act it good. But Rosalind barely breaks her stride, and she echoes her previous line, "I see no more in you than in the ordinary of nature's sailwork," which means that Phoebe has nothing except the ordinary handiwork of nature. Phoebe's not beautiful, she's not special, and Rosalind is not interested. But she realizes Phoebe is falling for her. "Odds my little life," which is great. It means like, "God save my little life. I think she means to tangle my eyes too." Some people just look really good in drag. But Rosalind's not about it. "No, faith, proud mistress, hope not after it. It's not happening." And then she gets right back to it and starts insulting Phoebe's inky brows, black silk hair, your bugle eyeballs, nor your cheek of cream that can entame my spirits to your worship. Folks in Shakespeare's time apparently thought that this was a really hot lady, so all of the descriptions of Phoebe are supposed to be really ugly. I particularly like the bugle eyeballs. I used to put bugles on my fingers when I was a kid, and I pretended I had claws like Wolverine. Also, check out how we have all of these no, not, nors in this bit. It's as if she's saying, like, no, no, no. Then, Rosalind pivots and starts this next section by turning on lovesick Silvius. You foolish shepherd, wherefore, which means, why do you follow her like foggy south puffing with wind and rain? She kind of makes fun of Silvius, but she still says you are 1,000 times a properer man than she a woman. A nice bit of antithesis, but also I love that she's still insulting Phoebe, but through Silvius. She continues to insult the both of them together. 'Tis such fools as you that makes the world full of ill-favored children, which is just awful. Ill-favored means ugly, so it's like she's saying idiots like you are why the world is full of ugly kids, which, goddamn. She keeps hacking away. 'Tis not her glass, but you that flatters her, and out of you she sees herself more proper than any of her lineaments can show her. This nice long stretch gives a good flow to this idea, and it basically means that the mirror doesn't tell her she's pretty, but you do, and she thinks she's beautiful because you keep telling her she is, idiot. Rosalind ends with her finishing move and turns back to Phoebe for this last section. Mistress, know yourself. Down on your knees and thank heaven fasting for a good man's love. Pretty much every production ever takes that down on your knees as a stage direction, and so we get a good mix of sex and religion, which is, always Shakespeare approved. This line is deeply insulting. Know yourself comes from the phrase written above the oracle at Delphi, but in this case it just means know your limits and be grateful to God that someone actually loves you. For I must tell you friendly in your ear, sell when you can. You are not for all markets. She's saying that, hey, if somebody loves you, take what you can get because not everybody's buying. And she finishes it off with a final rhyming couplet telling Phoebe to beg forgiveness. Cry the man mercy, love him, take his offer. Foul is most foul, being foul to be a scoffer. One last dig. You are too ugly to refuse anyone. Beggars can't be choosers, basically. One of the really interesting things about this speech is how Shakespeare shows Rosalind's intelligence. Not only does she have some great insults and a real knack for hitting a person's weak spots, but the fact that there's so much punctuation, so many questions, the fact that Rosalind keeps jumping from Phoebe to Silvius back to Phoebe shows how fast her mind is working. A lot of this play is about what things seem real and what things really are real. It's part of why we have so much stuff about eyes and mirrors and appearance. And one of the things that makes Rosalind a great character and a great insulter is her ability to see past the delusions that we all participate in and get right to the real truth.
And why, I pray you? Who might be your mother, that you insult, exalt, and all at once, or the wretched? What though you have no beauty, as by my faith I see no more in you than without candle may go dark to bed, must you be therefore proud and pitiless? Why, what means this? Why do you look on me? I see no more in you than in the ordinary of nature's sales work. Odds, my little life, I think she means to tangle my eyes too. No, faith, proud mistress, hope not after it. 'Tis not your inky brows, your black silk hair, your bugle eyeball, nor your cheek of cream that can entame my spirits to your worship. You foolish shepherd, wherefore do you follow her like foggy south, puffing with wind and rain? You are 1,000 times a properer man than she a woman. 'Tis fools such as you that make the world full of ill-favored children. 'Tis not her glass, but you that flatters her, and out of you she sees herself more proper than any of her lineaments can show her. But mistress, know yourself, down on your knees, and thank heaven, fasting for a good man's love. For I must tell you friendly in your ear, sell while you can. You are not for all markets. Cry the man mercy. Love him. Take his offer. Foul is most foul, being foul to be a scoffer. So, take her to thee, shepherd. Fare you well.
Rosalind is a clever character with clever insults, and one of the big ways that Shakespeare's crowd liked to show off their writing skills was to engage in this battle of wits. Clever, interesting verbal volleys with lots of wordplay and puns and lots of tricky, clever language. But that's not all he was good for. Shakespeare was not above just hammering out insults like any respectable sailor or truck driver. In the play King Lear, The character Kent is a loyal but long-suffering nobleman who is trying to stand up for his increasingly crazy king. He takes a lot of abuse, and he's a pretty patient guy, but at one point, he gets into it with this guy Oswald, a petty little servant that is giving him a hard time. Kent's patience is running thin, and he starts picking a fight with Oswald, who says basically, "What the heck, you don't even know me," which just tees the ball up perfectly for Kent to say, "Fellow, I know thee." Oswald takes the bait and asks, "Well, if you know me, well, who am I then?" And Kent just lets him have it. He says that Oswald is a knave, a rascal, an eater of broken meats. Now, these are not the subtle, elegant insults that we got with Rosalind. Kent is way past that. He says that Oswald is essentially trash, and that he only eats scraps that other people leave him. He says Oswald is a base, proud, shallow, beggarly, three-suited, 100-pound, filthy, worsted-stocking knave. That probably doesn't sound so bad nowadays, but in old-timey talk, that was pretty heavy. He's saying that Oswald is lowborn, a peasant, that he has no money and no class, but he still dresses and acts like he's a gentleman. It's Mean Girl stuff. Now, this is all prose, not poetry, so we don't get the da-dum, but Shakespeare still uses a lot of devices. For example, notice how Kent's speech kind of grows and crescendos. Starts off short, long. Then the next bit gets longer and gets bigger. And like a little fire that grows into a whole inferno, his insults get bigger and badder as he gains momentum. And he keeps hammering on knave, which means a dishonest, good-for-nothing person. But it also means a lowborn, menial servant, which is what Oswald is. Kent keeps going, saying Oswald is a lily-livered, action-taking knave, calling him a coward and the kind of guy who will sue you over nothing. A whoreson, glass-gazing, super-serviceable, finical rogue, one-trunk inheriting slave. Whoreson is a dig about his mom, always a classic. Glass-gazing means that he's vain and he can't stop checking himself out in the mirror. Super serviceable means that he's a brown-noser and he will do anything for a promotion, but one-trunk inheriting means that he comes from nothing and has no worth to his name. Also, check out the alliterative double taps of glass-gazing and super serviceable. Kent says that Oswald is one that wouldst be a bawd in way of good service. A bawd is a pimp, so Kent is saying that you'd pimp yourself out if you thought that it would advance your career. All this, again, is meant to tell Oswald that he's a lowborn, common servant who just wishes that he could be a real fancy, pinky-extending, caviar-slurping gentleman. But instead, Oswald is nothing but the composition of a knave, beggar, coward, pander. So, basically not a gentleman. But now Kent performs his finishing move. Oswald is the son and heir of a mongrel bitch, one whom I will beat into clamorous whining if thou deniest the least syllable of thy addition.
Fatality.
Whoa, call the burn unit. Right? That's what people say. Son and heir of a mongrel bitch. Not a lot of translation needed for that one. We mostly know what that one means. And he says that he will beat Oswald into clamorous whining if he denies anything that Kent just called him. And you might not be too surprised to find that in a moment, Kent comes out with the old beaten stick and gives Oswald a jolly good thrashing. This verbal violence is a rhetorical technique called bedeligmia, which is great because it starts with a bd, which is just lots of fun. Bd. It's an ancient Greek word for filth, and it refers to this device of just hurling insult after insult, using long, crescendoing lists in order to express hatred or total contempt. Someone should tell all of the crazy people posting hateful garbage on the internet that actually they're just employing bedeligmia. But I think we can agree that Shakespeare does it better.
A knave. A rascal, an eater of broken meats, a base, proud, shallow, beggarly, three-suited, 100-pound, filthy, worsened, stocking knave. A lily-livered, action-taking knave, a whoreson, glass-gazing, super-serviceable, finical rogue, one-trunk inheriting slave. One that would be a bawd in way of a good service, and art nothing but the composition of a knave, beggar, coward, pander, and the son and heir of a mongrel bitch. One whom I would beat into clamorous whining if thou deniest the least syllable of thy addition.
So there you go. Shakespeare wasn't just May mornings and midsummer nights. They call him the Swan of Avon. And have you ever been attacked by a swan? But these characters are still just hurling insults and invectives like normal human beings. In part 2 of this episode, we're going to see how some characters go above and beyond normal insults and invoke a deeper magic to pronounce actual curses. See you then, you egg. Thanks for watching. A shout out and a huge thank you to the enormously talented Kaitlyn Schirard and Renea Brown for their contributions to this episode. Also, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the viewers and followers who have been so supportive, and a special shout out to Galena and her incredible support. Beggar that I am even poor in thanks, but I thank you.